Hey everyone, Brian Zane here with your AEW Dynamite review for August 11th, 2021. A lot to talk about in this week's show as we get closer to All Out and of course the big debut of Rampage, which was very heavily promoted on this week's show. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But first, as always, like what you like, don't be a dick. The show begins with MJF cutting a promo on Chris Jericho, all while eating a nice crunchy apple. It looked good. He says that even if Jericho makes it past Wardlow tonight, his dreams of redemption will still fall short at the hands of MJF come Labor number 5. Wardlow says he's got this, he's going to beat Jericho, and MJF counters with, like you did with Cody in the cage, don't screw this up. And we see Wardlow get a bit mad about that. He squeezes the apple and crushes it. So we're already seeing some tension between MJF and War Dog going into the main event. Your opening match is a trios contest as the Elite, Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks, take on Dante Martin and the Sydal brothers, Mike and Matt. And they announced during this match going on that Christian Cage versus Omega for the title is confirmed for All Out. The real story of this match, honestly, is Dante Martin's hot tag. Holy shit, if nothing else in this match, go watch that, because it's a pretty brilliant, 60 or so seconds of Dante on this big run, flipping all over the place. The crowd loves it in Pittsburgh. Omega gives him some, but Dante gives it right back. He slips out of the one-winged angel. The crowd, is electric just for that small counter, because that's such a rare thing. Dante is pretty valiant here, but ultimately does fall to the Elite, and so Kenny and the Young Bucks win here. Pretty solid opener. Afterward, Don Callis on the mic doesn't get far in his promo when Christian Cage interrupts him. Callis points out that Christian is outnumbered, but then out come Jurassic Express to slightly reduce the numbers advantage that the Elite have here. We come out from commercial break and all the parties are in the ring now. We actually get a pretty loud CM Punk chant as well as a yes chant as Callis is talking. Christian calls Don a carny piece of shit, but then corrects himself and for the benefit of the Yinzer crowd in Pittsburgh, calls him a carny jagoff. And he says that he had a meeting with Tony Khan and Impact executive Scott D'Amore and announces that on Rampage this Friday, the first match is going to be Kenny Omega defending his Impact World Championship against Christian Cage. So Cage already has the world title match for AEW at All Out, but now he's hoping to maybe go 2 for 2 in this one. That's a big announcement. And then Jungle Boy announces that next week he and Luchasaurus are taking on the Young Bucks for the tag titles. And then the cherry on top of this segment was Kenny Omega, Jurassic Express's theme is playing and the crowd singing along to it. And then Omega cuts them off and goes, wait, we all saying whoa, 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 or no, 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 no. And that was amazing. I love top heels who can walk that line between being devious and evil and stuff, but also kind of make fools of themselves and kind of be idiots when they're very so unaware of that sort of thing. I thought that was a pretty brilliant way to end it. But as far as the segment goes, building toward All Out, obviously trying to play catch up since Hangman Page was the one who was going to be challenging him until everything changed when the whole the issue of the birth of his child is going to be coinciding with that time frame. I understand why he's not part of the show anymore, but they're catching up with Cage and stuff. I'm not thrilled about the idea of these two having a match on television before their match on pay-per-view for a different title that Christian may very well lose. Not looking forward to that, but we'll have to see what happens on Friday. A promo package from Malachi Black where he says he's done everything he set out to do so far in AEW. He comments that Cody Rhodes has one foot in the grave as he shows off the boot that he stole last week when Cody was trying to remove them in the ring. He issues a very cryptic warning to the rest of the AEW locker room that soon they will find themselves arguing with God, so to speak. Then we get another promo package from Miro, who talks about his next opponent for the TNT Championship, Fuego del Sol, and he says that AEW is bribing Fuego with a contract should he survive against Miro, but Miro is not liking Fuego's chances for Friday. Up next, in a follow-up from that 6-man tag match we saw last week, Daniel Garcia challenging Darby Allin to a singles match. He says in his pre-match promo he's going to finish what he started, and then 2.0, who are at his side, threaten Sting pretty heavily in that promo as well. The match is a very good showing for Garcia. The whole thing is, I think, a great showing for him because the commentators put him over really big, talks about his busy week in the independents, how he's wrestled 7 matches in 6 days or whatever, including a 60-minute match with Wheeler Yuta. And also he's very deliberate, very technical in this match as he wears down Darby's arm. In the end, Darby makes a comeback, hits the coffin drop to win. It's a fairly academic match, but I think it was, like I said, a good showing for Garcia, who's now having his second week on Dynamite. So he's getting some good looks here. After the match, we see 2.0 try and beat up Darby, but then Sting makes the save. Sting suplexes Matt Lee on the ramp and then just punches Jeff Parker afterward. We find out that 2.0 is fighting Sting and Darby next week. That is going to be a not a wild match, it's just a wild premise that this match is even happening. The match itself might not live up to the hype of just like, oh my God, like what is this matchup here? But I'm excited for it next week. The Death Triangle are chatting backstage about what Andrade, El Idolo, and Chavo Guerrero have been trying to do with them for the last couple weeks, trying to break them up basically. Pac tells the Lucha Brothers not to worry about Andrade, and he actually calls out Andrade to a match. If he has a problem with him, let's have a match and settle things. And then later in the show, we actually get a rebuttal from Andrade and Chavo, where Andrade says to be careful what Pac wishes for, and Chavo plants the idea, hey, why don't you fight him at All Out? And so that match is confirmed now. That should be a really good match. I'm waiting for that one for sure. Another trios match next, as the HFO, that's Matt Hardy and Private Party, take on Orange Cassidy, Wheeler Yuta, and Chucky T. Some good shtick at the beginning with Orange and Matt, including Orange's kind of tribute to the Matt Hardy like finger gun second rope leg drop, where instead of the second rope, he's on the first one, he just kind of like throws his hands up for a second and just kind of belly flops onto him, which is hilarious. It's a pretty good match here. Near the end, but not the finish. This goes on for a while afterward. Nyla Rose jumps Chris Statlander outside. They're wrestling like in the next match, so I guess Nyla's getting some kind of edge or advantage over Chris here. There's still a lot of the match to go after that moment. Everyone gets their shit in. At one point, Private Party hit Gin and Juice on Wheeler Yuta, and then Matt throwing Mark Quinn into Yuta before he hits the Twist of Fate to win the match. What a baddie that Matt was. But yeah, I thought it was a very fun trios match. It had like a strong beginning with like the humor and stuff, and then like it just really ramped up near the end. I thought it was very enjoyable. We get a promo from Santana and Ortiz, kind of a rebuttal of what we saw Dax Harwood do last week. They show the Cash Wheeler injury again, which, stop doing that, please. But basically, Santana and Ortiz say that FTR want another go with them. Like they're more than willing to have another match, but it's going to be a different outcome. Then we go back to the ring to see Chris Statlander take on Nyla Rose. And so, of course, we saw Nyla jump Chris in that last match. And so they're continuing on with that, throwing Chris hither and yon early in this contest here. And at one point, Vicky Guerrero just screams at Orange, like right point blank range on the outside. My favorite part in this matchup is when Nyla is going for her like drape over the top rope knee drop from the top, but then Chris kind of counters out of it and does kind of like a handstand walking thing. Then Nyla just spears her. So she spears her upside down, which I've never seen done before, like outside of a Tree of Woe thing. So that was a pretty cool spot. In the end, Chris hits a powerbomb onto Nyla and then a 450 to win clean as a whistle. I'm like, wow, that is a dominant showing here. Like we're building Chris up here to be the next contender, it seems, but it just like, it's kind of crazy just like how summarily Nyla was defeated. It's a good look for Chris. She looks strong as hell. This match was entertaining at many points, especially again, the upside down spear was pretty cool. But yeah, it's more of a shock that she beat Nyla the way she did, just like out and out, like done and dusted. The Young Bucks are hanging out backstage by the old basketball hoop, and they're talking about how dominant they've been for the last year or so. They say next week's match against Jurassic Express will be as easy as a layup. They go for a layup, but then Luchasaurus out of nowhere just rejects Nick's shot, and then Jungle Boy comes in, dunks on Matt, and then just walk away, which I thought was amazing. What a twist, what a way to subvert what we saw last week with the Elite doing their basketball shenanigans here, kind of a sequel to that. And to see the baby faces like do something like that and not always have to resort to violence or whatever to like get one up on the heels, I'm all for that, some variety and stuff. I thought this was great. We get a red velvet hype package, then it's time for Britsburg, baby. Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, gets a massive ovation as the hometown hero here. And even though she's a heel, but she still cuts a bit of a heelish promo here, you wouldn't be able to tell because the crowd is really into what Britt is saying. She's interviewed by Tony Schiavone in the ring, asking what she thinks about her opponent for Friday, Red Velvet. And she says she can't relate to Red Velvet's story of how she's like worked so hard to get to where she is because she says she's always been at the top of the women's division. And she tells the city of Pittsburgh that her as champion gives the city and the rest of their sports teams some hope, which gets kind of like kind of a sad applause from the crowd. We're like, hey, now like our sports teams they haven't won championships. So yay, Britt. Does the DMD catchphrase, but then Red Velvet herself storms the ring. They scuffle. It gets broken up. I thought it was a good segment to build to the match. And again, just plugging away at Rampage for Friday, and that match being the main event, I think will be a good performance. It's going to be a good test for both women because they bring up the fact that the last time they wrestled each other was eons ago from where they were in the card, and where they are now, like everything is elevated. The stakes are so much higher, so I'm definitely into that. We hear from Ricky Starks and Brian Cage trading some words in a promo package. A collision course seems to be due with them next week on Dynamite. On we go. For the first time in AEW's history, the Impact Tag titles are being defended as the Good Brothers, Gallows and Anderson, defend defend against Evil Uno and Stu Grayson of the Dark Order, and Scott D'Amore joins the team on commentary. He doesn't really add much to the match, but he's there, and that's important. It's a good competitive match. There's not too much I could say about this that really caught my eye or I vividly recall. It was just, good back and forth. The crowd loves them. Some Dark Order. Brandon Cutler is removed early on from the match after the Elite Hunter Kazarian intervenes. Match ends with some referee distraction using one of the title belts. Carl hits the gun stock onto Evil Uno, and he seems to hurt himself in the process doing that, the way he gets up afterward, though. Magic Killer onto Grayson for the Good Brothers to retain. We hear from the NWA Women's Champion Camille. She cuts a promo on Layla Hirsch, who she's defending the Women's Championship against later this month at NWA Empower. Says Layla's the big underdog and everything, and how Layla's going to come out on top. And then we go to the ring where it's some kind of apology, and QT Marshall is involved. This is something they've been building toward for the last 3 weeks, intentionally or otherwise. It's finally happening here. But QT with Shivani in the ring says, you twisted my words, Tony. I'm not apologizing to you. In fact, you should be apologizing to me because you've been disrespectful, but that's not going to happen, so I will apologize to you in advance for what we're going to do to your son, Chris Shivani. Bring him in here. He's sitting in the front row. He just gets brought in by Camarado and everything, and they hit him once, and Tony, under duress, apologizes to QT, but QT's like, apology not accepted, diamond cutter. And then he celebrates, and then suddenly, well, it's Paul White. It's not the exact same theme as the Big Show, but it's very similar, I would say, the new theme Paul White has. So he gets in there, choke slams Aaron Solo while Camarado and QT make their escape. And that's that, Paul White defending the honor of his good buddy from Dark Elevation, Tony Schiavone. Are we getting to see, is this building toward a QT Paul White match in the future, fighting for the Schiavone family honor? That should be very interesting. As far as the segment goes, it was okay, but I also wish that they gave us a bit of a refresher as to why this was happening. The feed that I was watching didn't have any kind of context. Maybe somebody else's feed did. I don't know, but I almost forgot why this was happening in the first place. Main event time, it's the fourth labor of Jericho as Chris Jericho takes on Wardlow in singles action, and MJF is at ringside for this matchup. The story here is that Jericho, very early on is out of his depth because he hits a code breaker early on, but Wardlow kicks out at 1, and Wardlow just dominates him for several minutes. Multiple power bombs happen in the course of this match, and it's pretty brutal. Jericho gets beat up a lot here, and they're also bringing up the fact that, hey, he's been wrestling these 3 really intense matches in the last 3 weeks. He's worn down, he's fatigued and everything, and so that plays into why Wardlow was able to dominate for so long. Jericho's able to fight back. MJF causing some sneaky mischief a couple of times in this match. At one point he's caught red-handed though in the ring, trying to hand off his dynamite diamond ring to Wardlow, and Aubrey ejects him. While that's going on and Aubrey's distracted, Jericho hits Wardlow with the baseball bat and the Judas effect to win and survive yet another labor. Then afterward, Shawn Spears jumps Chris Jericho, Sammy Guevara makes the save, and then suddenly you've got this beatdown where MJF puts the armbar on Jericho, Wardlow takes out Guevara, suddenly Jake Hager makes the save and chases out the baddies. MJF on the microphone saying that the fifth labor, of course, as we know, will be against MJF, but the stipulation is going to be that Jericho will not be able to use the Judas effect or MJF automatically wins. Also, he will not be coming out to his theme song, Judas by Fozzy, and it's going to be, I'm guessing the fans are going to try some a cappella rendition just out of spite for MJF, and it's gonna totally just fall apart and be hilarious. But that aside, now we know that's the final test for Chris Jericho. He can't use the move he has used to win all of his previous labors up to this point. So it really puts Jericho at a disadvantage. I thought the match itself with Wardlow was okay. Told an interesting story about Jericho again being worn down and fatigued. And yeah, I'm surprised honestly that the fifth labor is happening on TV next week. I assumed it was going to be on All Out, but it's going to happen next week, and I'm very excited to see how it all wraps up. I give this week's episode of Dynamite a solid B grade. There were a couple of good matches here I enjoyed. Also, a couple of good smaller things peppered throughout that I was also a fan of. Also, I just realized, weren't we supposed to be getting a Dan Lambert thing happening this week? And he's going to bring somebody to fight Lance Archer? I just realized, as I'm talking, that never materialized. But I guess we had to make room for the QT Marshall thing with Tony Schiavone instead. But yeah, I thought the show itself, pretty strong, good build toward All Out, and well, again, particularly Rampage. Like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to watch it, but if I had the time to watch it, based on how they promoted it, I would definitely be watching it. But what did you think of Dynamite this week, folks? Let me know in the comments section below, and stay tuned for later on Thursday because the latest episode of This Week in Regret is gonna drop on the second podcast channel, where Jay Biggs and I will talk about all the big goings on in the wrestling world in the last 7 days or so, including that big rash of NXT releases that has got the wrestling world talking about the brand's near future. But until then, I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.